welcome back to another episode of Martha Monday, where we go through Martha Stewart's Homekeeping Handbook, and we're gonna learn how to clean like Martha herself. So in this episode, we are covering a new room. We have been on to the kitchen for the last, I don't even know how many episodes, but we are moving on. We are sat in the dining room today because that is the chapter we are covering. So grab your books, grab your notebooks, grab a glass of wine, and let's get going. So we will be covering pages 145 to 181, and I have a feeling that this chapter may feel dated to some people. For example, we're supposed to be covering the dining room. Most of us, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of us don't have a proper dining room anymore. So for me, I am obviously in my dining room, but my living room is attached, so is my kitchen, and it's really just our kitchen table. We don't have a separate dining room table. So there are some things that don't really apply, but there are other things that I really think are just going to be relevant forever. So let's get into it. I did want to read out this quote. "You can transform the tiniest corner into an elegant place for entertaining." So really, Martha goes into the first few paragraphs of the opening paragraphs of this chapter explaining that you don't even need a dining room to apply a lot of this to your life. So there you go. If you don't have a dining room like me, you can use whatever corner to get your layout basics right, to host beautiful dinners, etc., etc. So she does go through the basic layouts. She talks about the types of chairs. So the chair I'm sitting in right now has arms, and then the chairs along the sides don't. So she talks about the reasoning behind that, how the feng shui works of the dining room, and then the different types of wood and all the common wood finishes. So there is a list of preventative care, and one thing that I wanted to kind of get out in the open right away, because it's something I didn't know, is the fact that you're not actually supposed to use pledges or any sort of, she says, liquids, creams, or aerosols designed to dispel dust and generate shine are unnecessary and even damaging. And I could not agree more. And I've noticed that there have been a lot of white rings and marks coming up on our kitchen/dining room table since I started using pledge on it, whereas before I would just wipe it down with a cloth. And that is what Martha suggests, using a microfiber cloth with a little bit of mild dish soap and some warm water. And that is what she says to use on your dining room table or your wood table on a regular basis. She says many of these products contain silicone, an oily substance that actually attracts more dust and then it gets rid of. And after a while, the silicone will cloud many finishes and there's no quick fix. You'll basically have to just refinish it at that point. But there's some preventative care, and I want to go through that checklist quickly. So do not place furniture near heat sources, including warm air registers, radiators, or fireplaces. This can cause cracking and drying out. Wipe up spills immediately. We know that one. Use coasters for both hot and cold drinks. We try to do this. It's harder said than done. Like, I'm looking at a mark right there, which this is my spot over here, and I see a couple of marks. But we do keep coasters, and you can see we keep the hot plates right on the table runner so that we can quickly put them down if something seems too hot, etc. Use placemats and lay tablecloth before dining. So we kind of tend to use both depending on the day, but there is something that I have been using that I'm not supposed to use, which I'll get into later on in this chapter, but I'm a little embarrassed because I thought that's what they were for. Place a mat or trivet under warm dishes. That's what's sitting over there. Add an extra layer of protection with a dining mat, a 1-inch pad, standard size, available at home stores. I'll show you mine. I'll insert the clip now. Place vases on saucers. Place potted plants on saucers or in cache pots. Avert scratches by affixing self-adhesive adhesive rubber pads are felt to the bottom of vases and collectibles. Store table leaves in protective bags in the same environment as your table. So this one is so important, and it makes a lot of sense. I've just never thought of it. If you leave your table leaves in the basement or the attic or in the garage or whatever the case may be, and it's not actually in the same environment as your kitchen table, it's going to, the humidity is going to be different, and they might fluctuate and shrink or swell in different ways than your actual table, and then they're not going to fit properly, or they're just going to look a bit off. So that is definitely a big tip to take with you. If you don't have your table leaves in the same room, move them back. A little side note tip she has on this page, and we're on page 149, is that she keeps her corks, and that is what she uses to steady wobbly chairs. So we now use felt pads, but remember this was written in 2006. I'm assuming they still had felt pads then, but she says that she uses the cork, and she just slices the cork with a knife to the right height that she wants, and then uses that on the bottom of her chairs. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a couple things. She has periodic maintenance, quick fixes, and scratches. But then one thing I really picked out of this chapter is candle wax. So if you get candle wax on your hardwood kitchen or dining room table, what you want to do is you want to put ice cubes into a sealed Ziploc bag and set it on top of the wax. Once it hardens and really hardens, it's going to be a lot easier for it to come off. And then it's saying that you want to use a credit card or a plastic spatula, something that's a little bit soft. Don't use anything made of metal, to get off all the excess wax, and then you want to buff it. So you're just going to buff it with a soft cloth. As for the rings, the white rings left behind by glasses, and like we have a lot ourselves. I don't know if that will show up on camera, but we have one right here from a hot plate, but the glasses do the same thing. If you have that, all it means is that moisture or heat has disturbed the wax finish, and that particular spot just needs to be re-waxed. So this isn't like a full, we have to get our whole table redone. This is just a case of rubbing it with mineral spirits, then applying the wax and buffing it out. So if the ring turns darker, then it means it's actually gone down to the wood. And in that case, you do need to get the whole thing redone. But if it's white, it means it's topical, it's a wax thing, so it can be redone without having to redo the whole table. I have yet to try this. However, on page 151, there is a whole page with 5 tips about how to wax a table. So maybe that is a subject of a whole other video. On the topic of wax, we're now on page 153. How do you remove wax from upholstery? It is very similar to what we did with the table. You want to get the wax to be cold, as cool as possible. So again, ice cubes into a reusable bag. You put the bag on top of the wax or secure it onto the wax in whatever way you can, if it's the side of the upholstery. And then once it's firm, you are going to use the dull edge of a butter knife, or again, I think you could use a credit card, although she doesn't mention that, to scrape off all of the excess wax. Then you are going to again use a wet cloth, and you are just going to buff out the rest. If your wax is on a cushion cover, then you can take it off. You're going to put several layers, so take off your pillow cover, put several layers of paper towel on either side of the wax, so on the inside of the pillow and on the other side of the wax, and you're actually going to heat it with an iron, and the paper towel will absorb all of that leftover wax, which again, crazy tip, but I have needed this before because it's not so simple. You can't just throw a pillow into the wash with wax on it. That's not going to work. Now, another thing to know is that the wax can leave a residue, so you're going to want to use a stain spot product just to make sure that nothing is left over. Moving on to page 154, she gets into how to set a table. So I know that this is one of my best memories of growing up with my grandma. Is she used to throw dinner parties that were immaculate. So I learned a lot of rules from her and then through my mom of how to set a table. So I could do a whole video on this page alone, but this book has all of it. So in terms of the actual like how to set it up, and then little rules like, you know, it drives me nuts when people put a knife down and have the blade side out. It has to be tucked in towards the plate. So little things like that that are so important for etiquette and just kind of keeping that alive. When I find that very important for me, I don't know why, but I just love that. Table, and then this is the thing I forgot or that I didn't know, is that chargers, how to use a charger. I used a charger in replacement as a placemat, and that's incorrect. So Martha says it is purely for decoration. It is also known as a service plate. It's an oversized plate, usually 12 to 14 inches in diameter, that is only meant to serve as a placeholder at a formal table. So dinner is never served on a charger, although it's permissible to set the first course or a bowl soup on it. Then the charger is removed along with the first course before dinner is served. So I have been using the charger just instead of a placemat. Let me know in the comments if you knew that, or if you even care, or what you think about that tip, because I found that extremely enlightening. Also on this page is a whole section on service etiquette. And I wanted to go through this just because I think it's so fun. And again, I'm craving hosting people. But just if you are serving people who are coming over for dinner and you're having that type of dinner where you as the host will serve them, these are just things to keep in mind. Serve guests from the left. Remove dishes from the right to left, depending on which is more convenient for the guests. Fill glasses up from the right, leaving the glasses in place during pouring. Refill wine glasses only halfway. Before serving dessert, you clear the table of everything except for the glasses, which will remain until after the guests have completely left the table. If dessert flatware has not been placed above the dinner plate when the table is set, bring it up to the table on a tray along with coffee cups and saucers. Then on page 156 and 157, she gets into linens and all the different types of napkins and the types of napkins to buy, what works, where to store them, again, how to remove wax from linens. Then 160 all the way through to 165, she's talking about china. So a few different things. She's talking about the different type of china, what sizes to buy, etc. for the number of people, and caring for china, whether to hand wash, when you should dishwash, when you should ignore what's on the bottom of the plate, even though it's saying it's dishwasher safe, how to repair broken china, the different types of china, how to display china so that it looks appealing to the eye. And then she gets into flatware, and the same thing, she goes through everything, the different types of knives, lots of different things. And then it's the same with forks and spoons. It goes through all the different kinds, how to polish silver, how to clean bone and ivory handled cutlery. There are so many things on that. And then it gets into glasses, all the different types of glassware, what glassware you might need, what kind of glassware you should be using for what type of alcoholic drinks. Hence my wine in this episode. Well, let's see if this is actually a white wine glass. So they have a water glass, a sniffer, a flute, a white wine, a burgundy, and a cordial. So under white wine, it says, because white wines are best enjoyed chilled, the bowls are smaller than Bordeaux glasses. White wine glasses also have narrower openings, which concentrate the delicate scents. I have a feeling this is not that. So let me know in the comments below if that is the right glass to use. This is a fun one. So on page 178, Martha Stewart talks about the bar. And there's nothing more I love than thinking of Martha Stewart in her own bar. Like, I just feel like she would be the funniest person to drink with. But she has a liquor and beverage checklist that she recommends to have for any household in terms of hosting. So I'm gonna go through that now, and you can tell me if you have some of these items or if you think that there's something missing, etc., etc. So, most liqueurs are kept indefinitely in the cupboard, but port, vermouth, and wine will spoil if left at room temperature once opened, and therefore must be refrigerated in your bar fridge. So hard liquors you should have vodka, gin, whiskey, Scotch, Irish, bourbon or rye for the whiskey, and rum. You should have wine, beer, vermouth, you can have sweet or dry, tequila, triple sec for margaritas, and then mixers and soft drinks including soda water, tonic, Coca-Cola, ginger ale, and a variety of juices, aperitifs, brandy and cognac, cordials such as eau de vie, bitters, Worcestershire, Tabasco sauce, grenadine, and flavored syrups for cocktails and soft drinks, fresh garnishes such as lemons, limes, mint, bottled garnishes such as maraschino cherries, olives, and cocktail onions. Non-alcoholic wine and beer is always a good idea to have, especially if you're around my age and all your friends are starting to get pregnant. I think it's so nice to offer mocktails or a non-alcoholic beverage, and it's just a good idea to have. Sparkling cider, and then sparkling mineral water or seltzer. So that is the checklist. She also has a checklist for all the bar tools that you should have. So bottle opener, corkscrew, ice bucket, tongs or scoop, cocktail shaker, paring knife, cutting board, long-handled cocktail spoon, a jigger with levels, for example, a half ounce and a full ounce, slotted spoon or strainer, and then optional, she says, swizzle sticks, peeler or zester for the citrus twist, champagne stoppers, wine and vacuum stoppers, pour spouts, a bartender's guide, which I do have in the back, a muddler, and a blender. So then she gets all into wine and entertaining, notes about the butler's pantry and all of that, how to set it up, how to store wine. And guess what? I actually had to look up. I left this white bottle of wine more than half empty on the counter last night, and I was so upset because I was like, oh, the wine would have gone bad. Like, I won't be able to drink it. I'm gonna have to pour down this expensive is all relative, this $20 bottle of wine. I'm gonna have to put it down the drain, and I've only had a glass. And then I looked it up, and Martha tells you in here, white wine it doesn't need to be refrigerated. So it had the cap on. It can actually last 2 to 3 days open at room temperature before it starts to spoil. So I was good. I was able to put it into the fridge, and it was absolutely fine. And this chapter on page 180 to 181, she talks about candles. So this is, I guess, part of dining rooms because she expects you to use candles, but she has burning tips. She has how to remove soot stains. She has how to remove wax from candle holders, all of that. So I want to quickly go over that. So burning tips. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tips for how to burn a candle. Number 1, cut wicks 1/4 of an inch in length before lighting. The longer the wick, the larger the flame and the more it will soot. Protect candles from draft, which create a larger flame and shorten the life of a candle, as well as cause it to melt in a lopsided position, which is like a pet peeve of mine. I love when candles will burn flat. Protect candles from light and heat. Placing them on a sunny windowsill or in an overheated room can cause them to soften and droop. Keep wicks centered in pillar candles. Off-centered wicks will cause uneven burning. That is so true, which will lead to spills and can lead to mishaps. To recenter, simply extinguish the flame, then insert a spoon handle alongside the wick and press it back into place. Number 5, limit burning time of pillar candles. Pillars should be burnt for approximately the same number of hours in diameter measured in inches. For example, a candle that is 3 inches wide should burn no more than 3 hours. Wow, I did not know that rule. Otherwise, the wax is likely to pool around the wick and bury it, ruining the candle. You can burn tapers as long as you want, as long as they're not smoking or dripping excessively. Number 6, if a wick is drowning in its own wax, score the candle with a sharp knife all the way around, 1/2 of an inch from the top, cut the candle through and make sure you don't hit the wick. So just make that a little bit wider so it doesn't drown. So then the last thing I wanted to touch on page 181, she talks about removing wax from candle holders. So there's a couple ways to do this. Hot water, if a candle holders are waterproof and not breakable, like not a crystal or something that will get damaged from really hot water, then you just run them under the hot tap and then remove the wax by hand. Or you can freeze. So when you freeze, the wax will shrink after a few hours in the freezer, making it a good technique for cleaning holders. Stubborn coating of wax inside should pop right out. To prevent the wax from sticking in the first place, fill holders with a 1/2 inch of water before you insert the candles. After melting or freezing, any remaining residue should come off with just some gentle scrubbing and dish soap. So I'm gonna show you, I actually have candles in the freezer right now. Okay, so here are 2 candles that are done and that I put in the freezer. Martha was talking more so about candle holders that you're going to place in like your tapers or whatever, but with these candles that come in their own holders and you really like the look of them, for example, the tops of these ones I really like. I think I will use this one for, I don't know, Q-tips in the bathroom, in the guest room, and then this one, I love this as well, and I actually have reused the wood wick candle holders in the past, and I'll show you. I have used them for potting plants. This right here was actually a candle, so I did the exact same technique. I put the candle when it was almost done or when it stopped burning into the freezer, and I've been able to reuse the base of it as a pot. Now, you only have to put them in the freezer for a couple of hours. However, these have been in there for, I want to say, a couple of weeks instead of a couple of hours. But you will see, I will just pop a knife down the edge, and you would have heard that it just comes straight out like that. So it's completely clean. You can see that is how clean the first pop came out. So that is everything for today's episode. I hope you found it insightful. I definitely did. I liked this episode a lot. I liked this chapter a lot. And I love that next week we are moving on to yet another space in your home. Next week is all about the living room. So I will see you next Martha Monday. Thank you so much for watching and have an awesome week. Bye.